girls to school was going to make them all chiloniot. They were all going to stop observing Shabbat and the mitzvot. They would marry guys that shaved, and that was it. Like it was the end of the world. So Beit Yaakov, the whole movement, which is about 100, maybe not even 100 years old, today has become a standard. So you'll say, look how long it took. And I'll say, it happened. It's a fact. It's not even debated anymore. It's not even discussed. Who would stand up today and say, I regret the fact that my daughter knows how to read. I wish she was still chained to an oven somewhere in a kitchen. It just doesn't work that way. So thankfully, realizations like this come. They come slowly, but they come. How much longer do you think it's going to be for everybody in Mea Shearim has some kind of a smartphone or another with all kinds of controls and bells and whistles? But half of them already have them. I'm sure they just walk around with the flip phones. They don't get called out.
Oh, they get two of them.
Right, exactly.
They have two phones
two
now.
Two different lines. So, fine. They draw a line somewhere, like the clothing. Most Haredi communities are very adamant about the clothing and wearing the same thing everybody wore for whatever. And it's arbitrary because it's only up to 200 years ago. They wore black hats in the time of the Gemara. But change comes. Change happens. And it happens in first gear because there's a lot of pushing that needs to be done. But ultimately it happens. I think mental health is another good example. Where it used to be in the Orthodox community, nobody sent anyone to a psychologist or a psychiatrist because they were, for the most part, extremely secular, probably atheist, and half of them were still crazy today. But today, thank God, you have Torah observant Orthodox individuals, men and women, who work in mental health. Things like domestic abuse, things like dependencies on drugs and alcohol, gambling, etc., are coming out. People are talking more openly about things that used to be in the closet, to use the fashion term. It's a good thing that these changes come. It just takes a little bit of time. Would it have been better if these changes came at 100 miles an hour? I don't know. I don't know that we would have gained more than we lost. But
can you predict what would be those changes? Like, for example, women rabbis is something that will happen.
If something like that ever does happen, and I'm the last person in the world to tell you that it's impossible, that it shouldn't. Listen, Chazal told us that the Imahot had a higher level of prophecy than the Avot. Like our matriarchs were better prophets than our patriarchs, which is a pretty hefty statement to make. I mean, in what's supposedly a male-dominated world. Here, Chazal telling you that the prophecies that we have that are recorded are those that we received from the patriarchs. Those of the matriarchs weren't committed to written record for whatever reason. If you ask Rav Ashkenazi, the answer is easy. It's because they were too high. We don't have the kidding. We don't have the utensils to grapple with that. What we received is the prophecies that we could understand, and the ones that didn't make it into the Torah. It's not because they were useless. It's because they were too powerful for us. We're just not on the level. The Zohar HaKadosh talks about these things to a certain extent. It says that, in the future, for example, the strength of the, let's say, feminine nature of spirituality, the woman in general, in short, will be equal to that of the man. So it's a Kabbalistic prediction. It's just a reality that we expect. In other words, according to the Zohar, the fact that we're in Galut has to do with the fact that Malchut in general as a concept has been downtrodden and ignored, and that our redemption from exile has to do with the status of the woman. Not burning bras in public and singing songs about men being evil. Women specializing in those areas of spirituality where men aren't as proficient as they are is very much the crux of the impending redemption. So it's there, the material's there. I hate to sound like a conservative who's looking for something in the Talmud and say, you see, someone else did that, so I can do it too. But it's there. References to it are there. It's pretty clear. So how will this happen? It'll probably happen in very incremental stages. That's my expectation. If it happens faster than that, we're going to lose people. We might have to, but if it happens too fast, you'll have a whole group of, let's say, Haredi types who won't accept it. By the way, Mordechai was the same thing by him. The end of the Megillah, we're not that far from Purim. It says, Mordechai, Ratzul Rov Echav. Most of his brothers approved of him. And they said, no, most of them. Some of them didn't. Some of them said, look at him, he's all involved in politics, he's talking to the king, he's dealing with Esther, and they were married, and then she had to seduce him. This sounds like a soap opera. It doesn't sound like a nevuah. And they had to fight in order for us to get accepted. But at the end of the day, the Geulah came from her. And ironically, Chanukah, which was already a few hundred years later, if you remember correctly, the rebellion of Chanukah also started with a woman, Yehudit. So this is a prominent feature in these two rabbinic holidays that were at the very end, right after the period of prophecy. And these two forms of redemption that we still celebrate to this day are both very feminine in nature. So there's something to be said for it. Now, will the Charedim accept such a thing in the future? Like, if a woman were to start prophesying today, would they accept her or would they reject her? I don't know. Maybe it means they'd be rejected from redemption in some form or another. Maybe if it happens more incrementally, they would come to accept it. I don't know. All I can tell you is that as far as predictions go, do I predict that women will begin to prophesy again? Absolutely. How fast it's going to come, I don't know. It'll probably be more widely accepted by a larger number of communities if it happens incrementally and slowly. But if the redemption depends on it, we just need to, shift gears. It'll probably happen one way or the other. I'm not offended by this halakha or bodeket, etc. I think it's great that women are learning. It's great that they're achieving halachic proficiency. I'm not a huge fan of women getting a PhD and then getting married when they're 40, but I think that we as a society can do better than that. And children are a huge part of this. I think it's a shame that we don't appreciate children, and the housewife is by far the hardest profession any woman can ever undertake, trust me. So I think that there's also something to be said for that. Some of this depends on our ability to uphold traditional values. We need men and women to get married, men marrying women, let's be clear about that. And we need procreation, we need kids, we need continuation, we need education. I think it's great. And by the way, you know that the fact that today women are teaching early childhood in most of elementary school is also a novelty. We used to have men teaching these ages. It's very rare. Men don't identify very well with really little kids. So that's also a bracha, in a sense. So if we went a little bit long with conservatism, we'll try to at least a few of